Welcome to Men Are the Prize, the podcast. It's Harvey, your host. How you doing? How you feeling, man? Good week, bad week, up, down? How did it treat you? But more importantly, how did you treat the week? How are you treating yourself? Did you let it defeat you? I know you. You didn't let that happen. And I'm proud of you for maintaining. Life throws us curveballs, but it's always good to be able to handle it and hit it back and not let it get the best of us. Um, it's been an interesting week for me. So every time I do this podcast, I give a little bit of me when I talk to you guys and when I bring my guests in. This week has been a little bit trying, but I'm not going to let that, phase me. I have a fantastic episode today. Um, First of all, happy Mother's Day. If you are, your mom and you're listening or watching this, and to men, if you have somebody who was a mother in your life, if you have a spouse who's a mother, make sure that you take care of that person and wish them a genuine happy Mother's Day. This episode obviously comes out right before this day, and I have a great guest, and we're gonna have a fantastic conversation. I wanted to say to you men, this little something first. The guest that I'm about to bring out, I've been on her show and we talked, and she kind of opened up something in me when we spoke. You know me, you know that I've had some hard times. You know that I attempted to kill myself. You know I have this scar on my wrist. You know what I've been through, which is why this show is genuine, because I'm not just some random person talking. I come from experience, I come from dealing with that life. But my guest asked me when I was on her podcast, she said, to paraphrase, when you were going through everything, after you attempted and failed to kill yourself, where did you get the language to kind of describe what you were going through and how you were dealing with it? And it really made me think. I didn't have language. I didn't have the words. And it could have been a lot of reasons. One, I was never talked to about mental health. So I didn't really have the words. But what I really realized, the reason that I didn't have the words is because I didn't really understand what was going on. What I did know is that I just wasn't me at that time. What I knew is that the things that I love, the things that I like to do, the people I like to be around, the music I like to listen to, I wasn't doing it. I wasn't in it. I wasn't into my music. I wasn't into my headphones. I didn't dive into my interests because I wasn't there. It was somebody else. Somebody else replaced me. And while I didn't have the words to explain how I felt, I understood the feeling. And we men have to do that. If we don't understand, if we can't express to somebody, I'm struggling. I don't know what's going on. I'm depressed, but I don't know why. Um, if we can't tell somebody, we should at least be able to express the feeling. I don't feel like me. I don't feel like the man that I know that I am, the man that my mama raised me to be. And if we can do that at least, then we're on the right path to figuring out what we need to do to take care of ourselves. So take a moment, acknowledge your feelings. Are you happy today? Good. Are you sad today? That's okay. If you mad, that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. You've heard that before. But more importantly, understand it and deal with it. Process it. And then you'll feel happier soon, or you'll be able to deal with the emotions you're dealing with at that moment. All this came about because I was blessed to speak with our guest today. Let me bring her in. I love this name too. I bring to you Whitney Knox Lee. Welcome to Men of the Prize. How are you today?
I'm great. I loved hearing this reflection on our previous conversation. Um, and I'm ready to get into it.
That's what's up. Okay. So typically my guests are men, but one, Mother's Day is tomorrow. Two, this person is the mother of two Black boys. This is why I wanted to talk to her, because this is a conversation I've wanted to have. And lucky I found somebody who can express it, and we can have a spirited discussion on how to raise boys in our current society.
Mm.
So let's do this. I always read a bio first. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode because I have an amazing woman on here. So let's do this the way I usually do. Whitney is a proud Black American mom to two Black boys, a wife, an attorney, mediator, and anti racism and DEI consultant. She's also the host of Impostrix Podcast, where conversations center real talk about what it's like to navigate the professional world as a person of color. I read the bio ahead of time. And if you've listened to the podcast, it's because I want the men to hear that. I want to hand you those flowers right at the start. And that could have been something that was recorded earlier, but I want to start off positively. So I always read the bio to my guest. With that said, I'm just going to go into my first question. Occasionally, when I get men on, I just ask them this question, and I'm going to ask a mom this. When we talk about Black masculinity, does sexuality need to be part of that question?
I don't think so. I don't. I, and I think particularly for Black men, sexuality is a part of the question. Uh, but I don't think it should be, because who you love has nothing to do with how you show up for me, how you show up for those around you. And I guess I even have some confusion around the word masculinity. I mean, what does this mean besides how men show up? Um, and I think there's so much fear amongst men around being considered feminine, around being considered metrosexual, that those 2 things, um, diminish the manness in you, and that's before even talking about actual homosexuality or pansexuality or bisexuality or anything other than heterosexuality. So, no, I don't think sexuality has to be a part of one's masculinity. I think you can be masculine and love whoever you wanna love.
You are the first person to say no to that question. Every other man, every other person that I've asked, yes, because it's such an important part of how we are perceived now.
Mhm,
Apparently, who I love is more important than my intelligence, my education, my upbringing, a lot of things. A lot of people will make their determination about me by who I love.
mhm,
And it's a sad thing. So it's a question I ask because I'm always interested in the response. Um, but you brought up something in social media, just in general. There's this war. This it feels like this war between men and women about how men are this or how women are that, and we're just attacking each other. And I may have mentioned it to you. I look at social media because of my kids, so I keep an eye on what's
mhm,
going on and what they watch and what and who they're hearing. And there's a lot of talk about, and it's social media, which represents probably a really small part of society. But there's a lot of women who tell men what it means to be a man. There's a lot of other people telling us what it is to
mm,
be masculine, to be a man. And I've been thinking about it and I'm contemplating it. And tell me what you think of this. I feel like that I don't know if women can tell me what it means to be a man. But I feel like the women who may eventually be in my life, maybe be my spouse or partner, can tell me what it means to be the man they might want or the man they may want
hmm.
in their life. Because I think when you sit there and tell me these things, you're telling me the characteristics that you want in the man who's going to be around you. I don't think you can tell me what it means to be a man, but I can be your man and you can tell me what you want in your man. What do you think?
I agree with that. For as much as I try and tell the men in my life how to be a man, I've never been a man. I have never been a man. I have not navigated, I've not walked in those shoes. I'm also very aware I live in the South now in Atlanta. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and what being a man means is very different, from region to region is what I'm learning, and so my husband, who is a Southerner, has different ideas, has different values than what I came to our relationship with as a woman. We joke a lot about how initially, when we first started dating, he was opening doors and being all chivalrous and all this stuff, and I'm over here like, "Okay, but I'm a strong woman, like, and I'm an independent woman, so I really don't need you to do this." Like, he was pumping my gas. I never that never The only time I'd ever have somebody pump my gas was in Oregon, because in Oregon, they have, or at least at the time, they had gas station attendants or whatever, who pump your gas. Oh, what I would give to take back some of those words so that he could get out of the car and pump my gas. Because now, whenever it's freezing outside or it's raining, um, he's always like, "Well, you're an independent woman, so you can go ahead." So I think that what I might consider being a man versus what I might consider being the man that I want to be with are very different, or can be different. Similarly, how I consider, what it means to be a woman, a Black woman, what it means to be feminine, is different. I have different ideas about how I show up in my femininity, uh, um, in comparison to how media portrays woman and femininity and Black women and all of those things. And I'm cognizant of the fact that my ideas on who men should or should not be and what masculinity means is very much tied to pop culture and to media and to the narratives that I'm hearing, narratives that are sometimes not grounded in the value system that I believe in.
Let me ask you, just because you said it, and it's off the point, but we'll come back. Why would me pumping your gas threaten your independence?
It wouldn't. I was just crazy.
You were crazy. That's just what you no, no, that's
I was just trying to hold my own, like I don't it's just it's weird. It's weird growing up in one environment where doing stuff for myself was is something to be proud of, and the thought of somebody else doing even basic things was like, "But why?" Like, "I can do it. You don't think I can do it?" But now, we have fun, like I said, because now I'm all about the gender roles when I don't wanna do something. So, go ahead, take out that trash. Go ahead and wash my car.
mm,
Thank you for filling up the gas, for mowing the lawn or cutting the grass, as he says that we say
mhm,
down here in the South, is cutting the grass, not mowing the lawn.
okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. I think this question does go a lot toward gender roles. We grew up with different gender roles. Um, I eh, hmm, I didn't think that in the relationship that I was going to end up in, that we would fall so closely aligned with traditional gender roles, but the fact of the matter is we do. I cook in the house, he don't know how to cook. He can grill, which he calls cooking, okay, and he grills well, but I cook. I'm the primary parent, and we both work, we both bring in income, but he makes more money than I do. He's doesn't need to, and I was sharing with you in our last conversation that his dream life is being a stay-at-home dad, but I think it's just because he's lazy, and he doesn't know that being a stay-at-home dad, like, all the work that goes into being a primary parent, and maintaining the house and all that stuff, but
Mm.
anyways, so yes, I hope I answer your question. It has nothing
Yes,
to do with
I appreciate your candor. Thank you for answering. All
Uh,
right, let's get to this. If this is the first time that you are watching this podcast, thank you. I appreciate you giving me of your time, and you picked a great guest to listen to. What I do is I take the word prize. Four of the letters in the word prize represent characteristics that I think are good for men. But this is going to be interesting because I got a mama here who is raising boys, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to find a way to weave that in. The first letter in the word prize is P, and the word is purpose, reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. So I'm going to do my best to have all these questions fit into your role as a Black mom.
Okay.
So, what is your purpose as the mother of two Black boys?
My purpose is to keep them alive, and anything else is great. I want them to be happy. I want them to thrive. I want to give them the tools that they need, um, to have fun. And I have serious safety concerns. And so, maybe it's a bit simple to say that my purpose is to keep them alive, but at the end of the day, I think the conversations that my husband and I have about parenting, about discipline, about school, about how our kids need to, manage conflict that they're having. All of it is toward the end of keeping them safe and keeping them alive.
What's interesting is I've never been a white parent or white person or anything or white mom, but I would imagine that keeping your children alive is on the list of a white mother's, this is what you're supposed to do. But it's at the top of the list when you're a Black mom. It's different. Their sheer existence is something that we are trying to maintain, while when you're white, their existence is expected. There's no expectation of danger.
Mhm,
While when you're a Black parent, Black mom, danger is just part of the day. Danger is, I don't know what is with kids with you, but at least for me, I drop my kids off at the school, at the school bus, and they take the bus to school. So you've got kids, you've got sons. So if they take the bus to school, okay, get on there. Now, just get back to me. Or you play a sport, get back to me. Or you have friends and you guys are driving somewhere and you're going to have fun, get back to me.
mhm.
It's so much more about raising kids and keeping them here when you are a Black parent and obviously a Black mom. Was there any fear for you when you're bringing children into this world? Was there, oh my God, this is what I'm bringing them into, and then finding out that you would have sons? What was that like for you?
Yeah, yes, and a big part of me was in denial about the world that I was bringing these children into and what it was gonna look like for them. My husband is Black, but he's light skinned, not but, and he's light skinned. My sons are light skinned, and I don't know how. I'm not light skinned, but, I remember seeing them for the first time after giving birth and feeling relief that they were light skinned, feeling like maybe that would give them a little bit more currency or a little bit more value in this world. Maybe that would make them a little bit safer. I I also do spend a bit of time not wanting to live in the fear. I had one guest on my show who made a statement that I don't know if I agree with, but the statement was that middle class Black people got nothing to be afraid about as far as, like, physical safety. We were talking specifically about police violence and police brutality, and she was saying that, most of the people or all the people or some large number of the people who are brutalized by police are low income people of color. And so when we're having the conversation about safety, at least in regards to state sanctioned violence, it also needs to be a conversation about class. Now, I agree, we need to have conversations about class. But her point for me was that as a Black mom, to try and let go some of the fear. Because what we do, and I do experience this, we experience this in our household, to keep these kids alive, because we're so preoccupied about keeping them alive, we diminish their childhood. And I recently did an episode on the angry Black woman and the strong Black woman. And while I was researching for that episode, I reread a study by Georgetown Law, and it was about the adultification of Black girls. And it said that in general, so across every spectrum, across every race, across class, adults in the United States think that or view Black girls starting at the age of 5 as being more mature, as being more knowledgeable about sex, as being less in need of care, as being older. And when we collectively think of little Black girls that way, are we robbing them of childhood? And so, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and that me and my husband will argue about, um, or I think this is the underlying issue in our arguments about discipline specifically. I want my children to be children, and we both want our children to be alive. And the fact of the matter is that in our society, there's only a few years in which little Black boys are cute. At a certain point, and my oldest son is coming up to that point, I think. At a certain point, little Black boys go from being cute to being a threat. And so, what do we need to do? And how do we do it to balance your childhood, son, with you're going to need additional skills that other people your age don't need because these skills might save your life. And it's difficult to balance. My husband is completely on the side of I'm raising what will be a Black man. So I need to do everything now. Like he can play, he could be a child when he's in the house, but everywhere else, like sorry, sucks, but that's what it is. And I'm like, no, but like he's not even mentally or emotionally developed to handle to learn these skills. And and then I think about Ruth, my guest, who was talking about class, and we are of middle class. And like, how much of this energy am I spending that maybe I don't need to be spending on this fear?
I don't know if you've seen it, and I'm sure you have it. And I don't remember the name of the book, but there is this picture of this man, and he is wielding the American flag, and it seems like he's treating it like it's a harpoon, and he's trying to stab a Black man, and that Black man's in a suit. And when I hear that statement, to me, I don't agree with that statement because the fact that I'm Black is enough.
Mhm.
When I hear that, that's the first thing that I thought of. There were Black men just walking down the street who were being spit on. There were Black men who were sitting at a Woolworths trying to eat and couldn't eat because they were Black. There are Black men in military uniforms who couldn't eat with us, and they were dressed to the nines.
Mhm.
And those men were rich or whatever, but at that point, I don't think their class wasn't even an issue. It's just how they were dressed. I don't think how much money I make has anything to do with how I'm treated. I
Mm.
can be in a three-piece suit. I can be Clarence Thomas, and even though he may not think so, he may have already been treated like a when he was walking around.
Mhm.
And I think those men tend to be, I would assume, middle upper class. So having money and being able to dress like that doesn't exclude us. It doesn't protect us from the racism, from the violence that exists that we get just because of the melanin that we have. So I don't particularly agree with it. I can understand it. I can understand why you might think that. But more importantly, everything you're saying, like not even being able to be a kid, like we raise our boys and so fast. I understand your husband, and I think I would want my son. I want it to be instinctual to respond in situations. So if he's 5 and I'm teaching him already, by the time he's 8, 9, 10, 11, he doesn't have to think about it. He sees the cop, he puts his hands down. Or when he's driving, he's like this, or his hands are like this, or he's just
Mhm.
not saying anything. Maybe you want to get to the point where he doesn't even allow emotion to affect the situation, because at the end of the day, we want you home and we want you alive. So you can, and I like the idea of he could be a kid at home because he's home, because he's going to be home. But if I send him out there and he's being a child, then he can be emotional. He might be a little erratic. And those emotions, those actions lead to really bad things. So
Yeah.
I see both of your sides with that. I understand exactly where your husband is coming from. I haven't thought
Well,
about it.
in it, going back to your very first question about masculinity, I just wonder as I'm raising my sons, so one of my sons, there are parts about him that are more feminine. He's very interested in makeup, for example. When I'm putting on makeup, which happens very rarely, if you're looking at me, you know. Um,
Stop.
when I put on makeup, when I do my nails, he's very curious about that. I don't know if this is going to be a sexuality related thing. I don't know if this is just curiosity. I don't know if because I'm his favorite parent, he wants to do things that I'm doing. He's very interested in little girls' hair at school. He likes beads, the beads that girls wear in their hair. Um, Understandably, my husband is uncomfortable with it. I am uncomfortable with it. And our discomfort coming from a little different places, because what I will say is that I am bisexual. I grew up dating men and women. Now I'm married to a man, and I plan to be married to him forever. Um, but even as a bisexual person, I'm afraid that if my son is gay or anything other than straight, let alone if he is, gender fluid, if he grows up, gets a little bit older, and feels as though he's not in the right body, I'm terrified. And I bounce back and forth between wanting to encourage his exploration and not wanting him to find out, like I don't want, because again, want to keep him alive. And I don't want him to be bullied. I don't want him to be made fun of. I don't want him to be cast out and told that he's sick or told that he's a sinner or told that whatever we as Black people tell uh, queer folks and whatever we as Black people tell trans folks. Like, I don't want him to be subject to that. Um, and also, he's emotional, much more emotional than our younger son, Royce. And one of the things that we work with him a lot on is that when he gets upset, he like shuts down. And I think he needs to be able to feel his emotions. But if he's feeling his emotions, what does that mean about his developing masculinity? Um, and I know that Harvey, that feeling your feelings is important. But I think one of the characteristics that our society has given masculinity is stoicism, is handling anything and everything, and not showing, quote, weakness, not crying. Um, but what does that do to us? What is that gonna do to my son?
Good
So
question.
we're constantly going back and forth between letting both our sons be them, just be themselves, and keeping them safe and alive, and acknowledging that sometimes the two don't coexist. My younger son was diagnosed with autism when he was 18 months old, very young. We were faced with a decision of whether or not to enroll him in what's it called? The autism therapy. For some reason, the name is escaping me right now, but it's controversial in some circles because some people believe that it is taking the person from the child. It's taking the personality out of the child and making the child kind of conform or assimilate to society and what society expects people to be like. Because um, autism spectrum disorders, they are behavioral and emotional and social um, disorders. That's the part of us that they affect. So my kid would have meltdowns where he would cry and scream and wouldn't be able to be calmed down, for example, based off of little things. He has sensory processing disorder where he doesn't like the feel of some things and might freak out. He's much better now. We decided to put him in, gosh, why can't I remember the name of it? Um, we decided to put him in the therapy, day long therapy. Some kids do day long, some kids do half day. He did half day, but then he would go and do speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. Long story short, what it came down to for us was that we needed our child alive. And that meant that if he could go somewhere to learn how to be perceived as less threatening, then we were going to send him to do that. And I think, for me, choosing whether or not to do this therapy was not a luxury. Like, it was we needed to do it, and we needed to figure out how to make it work. We needed to figure out the money, we needed to figure out the Medicaid, we needed to figure out the transportation because we had full-time jobs. We needed to figure it all out because him being able to function in our society, his life is dependent on it.
So true. I feel it's ironic that everything that you mentioned, all his characteristics, and the most masculine thing about him is the fact that he shuts down when the emotions hit him. I found that I think all this, but then when he's overwhelmed,
Mhm.
he just stops, and that is to a degree masculinity at its purest. Um, it's so sad that every decision and I think as a parent, we want our kids to be alive, but it's not what I think of. My kids are going to be alive. I feel like for me, it's quality of life for my
Mm.
kids as opposed to being alive. But when you are a black parent, quality is like secondary. I want
Mhm.
you to be here so you can enjoy life as opposed to just enjoying life because I don't know if
Mhm.
you can be here. And it's so crazy. And I talk a lot with when I talk to men and I talk to them about how they were growing up and going into school. And I use myself as an example. I was pretty smart growing up. I think I'm pretty smart now still. But growing up as a black boy, in a lot of cases, we are there. And then any little thing that happens immediately, we're the problem.
Mhm.
We are the bad kid. And then that's just what we carry all the way through school. So much so that it kind of shields any intelligence that might be there. We are assumed to be the problem or the clown. Therefore, these teachers are just trying to get us to go through instead of trying to inspire us to be super intelligent. So we don't get into as many honors classes because they don't think we have the behavior to do it. So I'm the problem. I'm not as smart. They do all this thing. And immediately I'm not a child anymore. Now I'm a concern.
Mm.
Now I'm, what am I going to do with that kid?
Mhm.
As opposed to just that kid. It's so, and I appreciated all this now that I'm older and I finished and I'm thinking I was supposed to skip a grade, but then I wasn't mature enough. But was it that I wasn't mature or they didn't want me in that group? Or they didn't think I was ready, or they thought I may hit somebody, or who knows what they thought. And even just being a kid, we are really taking away their innocence.
Yeah. And I'll say that whenever my kids get in trouble, so my husband and I are the type of parents that did no learning before becoming parents. We had kids and hoped for the best. We don't read parenting books. We don't take parenting classes. We don't go to any kind of therapy. Like, we don't get any help with parenting. Not suggesting that. I'm just saying that's what we do.
Right.
Um, so we're kind of feeling it out as we go. What one thing we have gotten the habit of doing in recognition of what you just said, which is that when Black people, period, not even children, when Black people, period, have when something happens, we are blamed. Let's see, how do I say this? If we've made a decision that has a negative impact, it becomes not about me as a person making a decision with a negative impact and more about me as a bad person. And that's what I heard you just saying with children. And so when our kids get in trouble at school, because they do, the first thing that we tell them when they get in the car is, you made a bad decision. Not that you're a bad person. You are not a bad kid. You're not a bad child. And they ask. Sometimes they ask. They say, "Mommy, was I bad today? Was I good today?" I say, "You made a bad decision today." Because I don't want them, my husband and I, do not want them to internalize decisions and behaviors that they made as being who they are. Because we all make bad decisions. We all make problematic decisions. We all make good decisions that have consequences. And those consequences may make somebody else cry.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah. Life. That's life. And I like the way you handle that. Making sure our children know that they're human, especially Black boys, above all things, so that what you do isn't a reflection of who you are, but a reflection of what you did at that moment. And it's important, especially Black men. I spend a lot of time trying to build confidence in Black men, not arrogance, but confidence. Knowledge that you are good, that you are smart, that you're intelligent. And with all that, you are still going to do dumb stuff.
Yeah.
With all that, we are not perfect. You are a great man and you're going to do something stupid. You are an intelligent person and you're going to make a dumb decision. You're really funny and you're going to make a crass joke. There are things that we do and we need to recognize the line between humanity and, I just messed up today. I had a bad Tuesday.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
try to talk to somebody and work out. That doesn't define you. And I needed to learn that. I failed out of college. It didn't make me a bad person. It was a bad time in my life. The next question is, what do you do now? Did you learn from that mistake? Did you learn from that decision? And I think, to kind of go back to what your husband was talking about in terms of raising his boys, situations will come up and you deal with it. And you want maybe to see your 5 or your 6, 7-year-old boy to see something happen, to see some Black man kind of get held up, and you don't like the look of it. And I don't want you, this is not you. I don't want you to feel that. But if this were to happen to you, you know how to handle it now? Do you know what you would do if a policeman stops? I think the best thing is being in the car with your father and maybe getting stopped. And that's maybe one of the great teaching moments that we fathers can have. It's, how do I handle it? I want to yell at this white cop. I wasn't speeding. I didn't go through that stop sign. My tags aren't expired. There's no reason. My car is mine. I bought it. But I don't need to say all that to that cop. What I need to do is just sit here, hands down, yes, officer, no, officer, yes, officer, so that I can drive away and my son can see that. Otherwise, he may never see me again. And
Yeah,
it's
and my older son is 6. My younger son is now 3. Um, the older one finally understands that he's Black, period. Because of their skin color. They He knew what black and white was. I mean, I can't say that he knows about any other racial groups because it's mostly black and white here in Atlanta. Uh, but he was confused about where he stood. He said that he was orange, which is great. Okay, you orange. He said, "Daddy's orange, Royce's orange, I'm orange, and mommy, you're black." And
interesting.
I said, "Okay, yep." And so I think for some, like, we haven't started having these more explicit conversations with him yet about what it means to be Black because when you have more ambiguous, maybe looking child, they need to first internalize that they are Black. And so that's what Everett has recently gone through is realizing that he's Black, not that he's orange.
I like that. That's cool. All right, let's keep it moving. The next letter in the word prize is R, and the word is resilience. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. And I feel like we've kind of spoken about this, but I'll still bring it up. As a mom, has a situation come up where you're like, wow, I mean, obviously this is difficult, but you kind of dealt with a situation where you discovered you had a resilience that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, and for us, that would be when my son was diagnosed with autism.
Right.
Excuse me. I feel very fortunate that my relationship with my husband is very easy. Um, he very much feels like an extension of myself, even though we're very different. He's an introvert. He would never do this. Um, but all that to say, when we got married, when I started my life as a mom, and well, as a wife first, and then as a mom, I thought that the marriage was going to be the hard part. And then when we had kids, like, yeah, I mean, having kids, being a parent was hard, but it was still like we had a lot of privileges. We are middle class. We can afford the things. We have a roof over our head. So the hard things weren't really that hard in the grand scheme of things. And then we had Royce. Uh, Everything about bringing Royce into this world was difficult. And he stayed in the NICU for 10 days. We brought him, and he was born during COVID. So when we went to see him in the NICU, it could only be one of us at a time for the day. Like, we couldn't even switch off. Only one person per day at a time. And we brought him home. Once he finally got home, everything was great. Everything was fine. He had a big head. And then he had a flat spot on his head. And then we noticed he wasn't crawling. And then we noticed he couldn't sit up. And then he was almost a year old and still couldn't crawl or sit, let alone stand. He was barely talking, like babbling. We were concerned that he had cerebral palsy because during my labor, he had lost oxygen for an extended amount of time.
Mhm.
Uh, Long story short, we went through 6 months of tests, of almost weekly doctor's appointments, of wearing helmets, of CAT scans, of doctors warning us to keep all of his medical records with us because and to monitor and track and communicate about what he was going through because some of what he had would make us susceptible to other doctors thinking that we were abusing him. So what do I mean when I say that? One, he had magnolia spots, which are basically big birthmarks on the back and butt that are like bluish. They look like bruises. More importantly, because he had a large head, he had what's called Best syndrome, benign enlargement of the subarachnid space, which means that his brain is regular, his skull is larger, and there's a lot of space in between. So if he hits his head, he might have larger amounts of internal bleeding than normal. The amount of internal bleeding that would be indicative of child abuse, of shaking your baby, of hitting your baby. I was actually working in my profession on a shaken baby case, representing someone who has spent 20 years in prison after being convicted of murdering his child um, by shaking. I was representing him on his appeals. We believe he didn't do it, blah, 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 blah. But, this was kind of the medical background for Royce. And then he was diagnosed with autism. We knew nothing about autism. We knew nothing about what that would mean for our family. We knew nothing about what that would mean financially for our family. Um, We were told that he had, a severe autism as a spectrum. We were told that he had a very severe form. We didn't know if he would walk. We didn't know if he would talk. And that was really painful because of the uncertainty, because of the stress, because of the guilt that we were not able to give our older son, Everett, the amount of attention and time that we were needing to give Royce. Um, and so when I think about resilience, that was the hardest time in my life, period. And it wasn't even, happening to me.
Right.
Um, but having all of the entire future of a child be an unknown because of a diagnosis that he's just received, and then needing to reevaluate literally everything. And it wound up, we got him into all the therapies. We made the sacrifices. We hired drivers so that we could keep our jobs because he needed to be driven from one place to another every single day in the middle of the day. Um, Now, 2 years later, he's graduated all of his programs. He's not in any therapies. He still has a big old head. Uh, he's very stubborn. He gives no shits about what you're saying. Matter of fact, I took a video of him last night. He was up late, supposed to be in bed. I'm talking to him. He's just standing there as if nobody's saying anything, like completely ignoring, like unfazed by me threatening him to go back to bed. Um, he says some wild things because he's still socially like he just is who he is. He's able to do the things that a lot of us want to do and doesn't phase him. Doesn't phase him to ignore you in your face at all. Doesn't you say hi to him, he doesn't like you? Does not phase him. He does not feel compelled to say hi or to give you a hug or to be your friend.
Wow.
So that's what resilience for me as a mother has meant. It has meant figuring out a way to get over my own anxieties, my own fears, so that I can support my sons and give them whatever they need and the best of it to my ability. One of the hardest decisions that we made during that time was which program to put him in. Atlanta is a segregated city like many of our cities. Most of our autism resources are in the white parts of town. I live in the black part of town, and there's about 35 minutes of traffic between those two places. And so we were accepted into one of the top tier autism programs, but it was going to mean driving to North Atlanta or moving. And we decided that wasn't going to be the best decision for our family. So we took a chance with another program that we loved, that did a great job, and that was a mile away from our house. So, yes, very long-winded way of talking about resilience in our life, but I think as far as motherhood and parenting goes, that was it. That's been our major thing.
I hear you. My daughter, my youngest, she's 9. She was born and she spent a week in the NICU when she was born. She was anemic. There was an issue with blood flow in the umbilical cord. But she was born in 2014, so before COVID. So we were able to go in there, and just hearing you talk about it really just brought back up. But one thing that came to mind, and I'm gonna, for a second here, I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit, if we can, about your husband because of one thing. So while this is going on, my wife, so my Lexine, who's my 9-year-old, she's born. It's a C-section, and she's born, and everything's okay. Next day, they're like, we're not liking these tests. We're not liking these numbers. We need to take her to another hospital. They in an ambulance and they took her to another hospital. My wife, because she can't go anywhere yet,
Mhm.
she calls me and she's like, they're taking our baby. And I'm like, what? I get there, they explain it, incubator, going. I follow that thing and I follow the hospital. So I leave my wife and she is just distraught, as you can imagine. I barely had a day with this baby, and now it's gone. So I go and we kind of went through and we went every day. At least for us, we could go together.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we got to take her home. Her birthday's December 23rd. So
Mm.
right New Year's Day, we get to take her home. All is well. And what I remember is everybody's like, oh my God, how's Carice doing? That's my wife's name,
Mm-hmm.
Carice. How's she doing? That must have been so hard. Oh my goodness, what are you guys going through? Blah, blah, blah. And it occurred to me how little people gave a damn about how I was dealing
At all. Period. Don't care.
at all. Now, what I wanted to ask is you explained an emotional, crazy situation where your child's life is hanging in the balance, quality of life, life in general, all that stuff. And I'm sure everybody's like, oh, how are you doing, Whitney? Are you okay? What's going on? Do you remember whether you or anybody else really went to your husband and was like, how you doing?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Okay, well, so for the first couple of days, okay, relating to his labor and being in the NICU, him and I talked um a bit. He is very pragmatic. He's also he does not express emotions.
Okay.
Again, we are not alike. He keeps everything inside until I don't know. I don't know what happens in his brain to make him decide that now he's gonna say something. But um so we were in conversation. He was supporting me, I was supporting him. He was less scared. He was frankly more concerned about me than the baby. I'm more concerned about the baby. He's more concerned about me. So, and honestly, maybe there was some resentment around the baby because my health was not great. Like we thought I was gonna die at one point.
Mhm.
Um I remember the doctors taking Royce to the NICU and saying, "Go with." They were telling him to go with Royce, and he's like, "But I'm trying to stay here with my wife."
Mhm.
Like, y'all's face looks like something is about to happen to my wife. So like, so there was that, and I think though ultimately, no, people didn't care about him. My mom was here, with him while I was in the hospital with Royce, and then when everything happened with Royce's diagnoses, I don't think that I checked on him to see. I mean, I think I did, but I don't remember. Yes, I did. So we had conversations. The thing was, I'm the primary parent. So I know he had a lot of stuff going on for himself, a lot of stress, probably a lot of financial stress because we were trying to figure out how to make money work to support Royce. But I'm the one doing all the driving and going to all the appointments and having all the conversations and remembering all the medical records and telling the doctors all of the things. So I know I was pretty in my head about how difficult this was for me and less concerned about my husband. And I know that like when I was pregnant, you probably experienced this. Like these doctors don't care about the daddies.
They don't care about us now.
Mm-mm. Like he was not invited to anything. And anytime he came with me to an appointment, doctors be talking to me as if he wasn't even in the room. And I'm like, He's not just the baby daddy. Like, this is my husband. Like, he's going to be right. This is his child. So, yeah, they don't care about y'all.
Mm.
Y'all
Yes,
just sperm donors.
basically, basically when Lexine, and if you think about it, when Lexine went to the NICU at the other hospital, Crease couldn't go. The only
Mm.
parent that was there was me. They didn't let me in. They needed to call her to verify that I was married to her. You don't understand. The only reason Foot and asses weren't connecting was because it was my child's life in danger. What do you? I'm her father. It's interesting. Part of masculinity is that's my child, is fatherhood. And at times it is just manipulated, disrespected, disregarded. As you are the main parent, I am. I
Mm-hmm.
take my daughters to get their physicals.
Mm-hmm.
So when my daughter, who's 14 now, Now, when they do it, they ask her, "Are you okay with your dad being in here?" Which I understand, it's
Mhm.
privacy and all that thing.
Yep, she's 14,
But
yep.
and she's 14, and I get that stuff, but otherwise, if me and my wife would go in, they would literally talk directly to her. "I'm here.
Mhm.
Hey, like, what medicine? How many times? Why is this happening? What's her temperature?" And I'm like, and
Mhm.
the irony of how they're not, fathers aren't being fathers, but when they are, they're not being treated as a equal parent.
Mm-mm. Yep.
There's so much to it. Being a man and being a father. Being a father is it's a whole different conversation. But that brought up a whole lot of stuff when you were talking because
Mhm.
I talked to men and men that I coach, and I had one father who it was an emotional conversation, and I'm trying to see the best way to. So he and his wife, I think the child was stillborn. They lost the baby.
Mm.
Baby cancer. And as all of us men will do, as all of us fathers will do, is we are there to make sure that mom is okay, to take care of her. What do you need? To hug her, support her, all that. But he said it took 3 months for somebody to say, "How are you dealing with this?"
Mhm.
He lost a child. He bought the stuff.
Mhm.
He was gonna have a
Probably
son.
put some of it together,
Yeah, he put that crib together. He bought
painted
that
the
first
nursery together. Yep.
all that stuff, that first football, he bought that first onesie, he bought all that stuff. He lost a kid too. Nobody gave a damn.
Mhm.
And he didn't realize, I mean, at that point, you're not really thinking about that. You're just, I'm focused. And it's almost easier to have somebody to focus on than to have to think
Mhm.
about it yourself. But he got to a point where he was like, I was cracking. I was I was at the end of my line and nobody even said anything to me. And he's like, it might have been for my benefit because if somebody had asked me, I probably would have fallen apart right then and there. But he's like, I'm, I have a loss here. I have a hole here too. And nobody
Yeah.
cared about filling it. Nobody was concerned with how big it is. Nobody was concerned with what we're going to do to heal it. Being a father requires a level strength, stoicism. We have to be stoic because nobody else gonna come and hold us up. So when we're talking about resilience, it's I don't know. I love having this conversation because we're both parents and different things come to
Mhm.
mind when we're talking about it. But I wanted to mention that in terms of fathers and how we don't always get that hug.
Mhm.
He may have needed that hug. Or, maybe let him sit on the couch and cry a little bit and that type of thing. And based on what you told me about your husband, he don't agree with anything I said anyways. Like, I don't need any of that. That's fine. She has that's her. Me, I'm making sure the
Mhm.
checks come every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I understand that.
I told Harvey recently that my husband does not cry and I get mad at him about it. Like, "Can I get a tear? Can I please have a tear? Any tear at all once."
I will tell my wife that, and she will agree wholeheartedly with you about that. I don't cry. I don't have the energy, and I don't think I'm hydrated enough to cry. I need this. I'm not wasting I need this water. So we not do. All right, we gonna skip the I. We'll come back to that. Z is the next letter in the word prize, and the word is zeal. Enthusiastic devotion. You are a black mama who you have real fears, concerns that you have to deal with every day. What do you do for you? Do you do anything for
Mm.
you to relieve the stress of feeling like one day may come and somebody may not come back? What do you do for your sanity?
I have a sister circle that I spend time with, so these are a close group of female friends that I spend time with. I'm pretty frequently in communication with them. Um, I have alone time. I sleep in on Saturdays and Sundays, which to me is like 9:30. Um, and I make my kids take a quote nap, which means on the weekends, I don't care if you go to sleep, you're gonna get out my face. Yep. So that's my time. Like, If Jeffrey, my husband, is around, that's our time to be together, watch TV or whatever, or just being quiet. If he's not around, that's just quiet time for me. They need to be out of my face.
And that's good. And it's important that we know what we need. I asked men about this because we don't look to that. And I wonder, and I don't know if that's something Jeffrey does, but I think men need to make a conscious effort to have something for their own, something for them, something they do that, and I say it a lot, that at times it may even be something that your spouse doesn't like. I talk
Mhm.
to men about this. Sometimes work is killing you. You've been working extra hard to get this promotion so the boss can see that you're doing so that you can get the higher title so you can make more money. And you're stressed. And then you come home to a wife, a mom who's been dealing with these kids. They're crying, they're screaming. You're trying to make dinner, you're trying to clean, you're trying to do the laundry, you're trying to do all this stuff. But you, as a man, walk in and you know that you are not there. You are like
Mhm.
10%. And I'm like, it's against our nature. I know it's against mine. But sometimes you got to walk up in that house like, babe, I can tell you're going through hell right now. I can tell the struggle is real. I can tell I don't have it right now. Sometimes you got to be like, I need like 2 hours to go do something.
Mhm.
And that hurts. You'll see it in the look in her eye because she was waiting for you. She was ready for you to help her to lessen the struggle, but you can't do it yet. And that's the hardest part, but also the best thing that you can do because you can tell her, I want to help you, but I can't help you right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does we take time when we need it. Sometimes he just disappears, like, upstairs or in another room. Won't say nothing, just disappears. Um, he also we have different sleep schedules. So, I'm more of a night owl. I go to sleep around midnight, wake up as late as possible. He goes to sleep at 7:30 and
Wow.
wakes up around 3 a.m. So for him, he gets alone time in the morning, and that's, for both of us, time that we cherish. So, like, when he's staying up late, I'm always like, "Why are you here? Like, why are you don't you have a bed to go in?" Like, because this is my time, and if I get up early, he doesn't really know, because I wanna talk. He don't wanna talk. He wants to sit there and watch his TV or news or do anything other than talk.
So you recognize that. So you can see that sometimes you just need, and the timing may be bad, but it's something that's necessary. And I'm sure you
Yep.
both have for each other.
The timing and, because sleeping for him till 3 is good. Oftentimes, it'll be 1:30 or 2. He is a, criminal attorney also. Well, not also, I'm not a criminal. He's a criminal attorney, and, his days are exhausting. So some days, he gets home, he eats, he goes to bed at 6:30,
Mm.
and those are days where it's like, Whitney, like, I know I'm supposed to be up. I know I'm supposed to be supporting you. I know I'm supposed to be helping with the kids. I know I'm supposed to be helping with homework. I know I'm blah, 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 blah. But, like, I literally can't keep my eyes open right now. And that used to upset me. I used to feel taken for granted, I think. Um, and so I made kind of this big old stink about, like, no, basically, like, get it together for another hour. And so he does that, sort of, but frankly, what happens is he comes down on those nights, comes downstairs after getting out of his work clothes, sits, on the queen's chair, which is the lazy boy, and the man will be asleep in, like, 2 minutes. I'm like, "You are literally no good to me asleep, so you might as well just go upstairs." So now I just kind of I I allow a little bit more grace. And
And that's
sometimes
hard.
on those nights, if I'm tired, then that's a night where the kids are watching TV the whole night.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I dare somebody to say something to me about that.
We parent how we parent.
Mhm.
Do what we do. And I like the fact that that you show him that grace. And it's work for men to do that because it's not something we want to do. We want to help. We are part of the family. But self-care and recognizing where I am, where my tank is. Sometimes I have to make a decision that sucks for everyone, but just for now is better for me.
Mhm.
And hard to think that way. It's kind of hard to be selfish, but that's kind of something I talk to men about. Yes, it's okay. It's okay to be selfish when necessary because you're better later. I'm bad now, but because now I get those 2 hours and I come in and you still mad. You still struggling. There's still a mess. They're still yelling, but I could walk in and I can snatch the baby from you and I can say, get up out of here. I got you.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, on both sides, both partners probably have these moments, because I know I certainly do, of there are times when it's supposed to be my time. So we're also very, it's a partnership,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
And since child 1, his shift, if you will, of primary parenting is the morning. Mine is the evening. So there will definitely be times where like it's my shift, where like if the kids need something, then it's on me type of thing. And I'm like, I'm gonna strangle this kid if you don't. And he can tell in the voice and the tone that I'm using. So he might swoop in and help, and vice versa. He's giving the boys a bath, and one of the boys won't stop flinging water all over the place, and I start to hear the voice come out that, then I'm like, "Ooh, let me get out of bed. Let me go save these children, because something about to happen. Something is about to happen."
And that's good. That's a good marriage. I've spoken about that in terms of self care and being and having the right person with you and having somebody know you well enough to understand when the inflection changes just a little bit. When the
Ever
volume
so
goes up,
slightly.
Jeff, it about to blow. Let me
Mhm.
go
Let
snatch him up
me
real quick.
go intervene.
I got you. And the same thing for you. I like that. The last letter in the word prize. The letter is E. The word is expectation. A strong
Mhm.
belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Can you give me a characteristic that you think a characteristic that you will be better at or will have a better version of as you spend more time being a mother? Is there something you can be better at as being a black mom?
Patience. Yeah, I would say patience, but I would also say communication. What I'm realizing about myself is that I'm really hot or cold. There's not a lot of in between, and there's not a lot of warning. And I'm sure that it can be jarring and disorienting for my children when, one night I want to tickle before bed and I want to read 5 books. And another night, I ain't got time for it. I'm tired. I don't feel like tickling. You get one short book and then you need to be in bed. Um, and I think, my kids thrive on routine. Um, and they enjoy, the routines that both of us have with them. And when we can't do that routine or when something needs to change, I want to be able to communicate that with them so that they can understand what's happening instead of just, you know, uh, some random, like, now it's just different and I don't know why. Or now mommy is short with me and I don't know, did I do something wrong? When no, probably not. Probably I'm just tired. Or probably I just had a bad day. Talking to my children about having a bad day. Talking to my children about being sick. Like, that's easy. That's the easy part. When I'm sick and I'm like, I can't play with mom. You guys can't play with mommy right now because mommy's sick. You don't want to get germs. Like, that's much easier to explain than y'all can't play with mommy right now because mommy's depressed. Or y'all can't play with mommy right now because mommy's tired. Or mommy doesn't feel like, whatever it might be because of some non-physical injury or situation. And so I just want to be able to communicate better with them so that they can manage their expectations a little bit more. And when something is surprising to them, they'll at least have a little bit more language around it. Um, and I'll be able to, model for them what it means to communicate, how we're doing, why we're doing things. And so I also try, um, when there is a tantrum, to understand what's going on. Like, I ask them, "Calm down and tell me. Like, if you can't stop crying, okay, I don't wanna hear you crying, so go up to your room and cry, but when you're done, you can come back down and tell me what you're upset about." My youngest son, Royce, is great at saying, "I'm so angry," and then he stomps his foot, and I'm like, "Oh, thanks for letting me know, babe."
I like
Like,
that.
that's life.
I hear you. The I in the word prize doesn't represent a word, it represents the person. So, what's the best way to describe you? I feel like I'm asking you something that you've answered so many times in this conversation, but I'll do it anyway. How do you give me one word? I can only get one word from you. Can't be patient, by the way, because you said that already. One word that you can use to describe yourself as a black mama right
Mm, I would say peaceful, which is strange. I rarely ever actually feel peaceful, but maybe it's at peace, which is 2 words, but, like, recently I've been my kids have been feeding off of each other's anxieties around school and kids at school and bullies, but also around, like, nightmares and being afraid of the dark. So, they're having a hard time falling asleep. They want me to, like, sit in their room while they go to sleep and stuff like that. We never did co-sleeping. I don't want them up in my bed, neither does my husband. I don't wanna sleep in your room. I ain't trying to fit into your bed. So, like, you do you, but that's gonna involve going to sleep in your room. Um, but so uh-oh, sorry. But so they, recently have wanted me to, like, be around while they fall asleep, and my youngest one still likes to be rocked and held, and I've been cherishing the moments of just sitting there with them, watching them sleep, watching them be at peace, and me feeling fulfilled, so maybe that's another good word, around the family that we've created. We don't plan on adding to our family anymore, and just feeling really grateful.
now. Another good word, I think,
Mhm.
maybe. I ask a lot of men this question, and I'm going to switch it around for you. Uh, um, you can tell a lot about a man by what he thinks his children will say about him. So when I talk to men, specifically girl dads, I ask them all the time, if I were lucky enough to talk to your daughter, what would she say about her daddy? If I was able to talk to your boy, what would they say about you? How would they
Mm,
describe you?
mhm. They would say I give them lots of candy and sweets, um, that I am more patient than their father, although they wouldn't know to use that word. Um, I'm the active parent, like, I'm the, "We're gonna go do something," and their dad is the stay home and play games parent. Um, and they would say that they love spending time with me. They're still at the age where, like, anytime I leave the house without them results in a tantrum. So they love being right up under me.
Like for fathers, it's incredibly important. This question always brings about a real emotion, especially when it's our daughters, because I don't know what it is about, and I say this as a father of three. There's something about what my daughter thinks of me. There's something about whether she likes hugging me or whether she thinks I'm too controlling or that I don't understand. My dad doesn't understand what it's like growing up in school and blah, 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 whatever, and all these things. But the characteristics that the description fathers give are really what they want to love about themselves. My daughter would think that I love her, that I care about her, that I want her to succeed, that I'm patient, that I'm caring, that I'm stern, but that I'm
Mhm.
fair. All these things, it's the kind of stuff you would put in your resume, you know?
Mhm.
So it's always interesting to hear what we think our kids think of us because it's really who we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think, because especially the younger one is so young, like, they don't really have the language. So I wonder, matter of fact, I'll probably ask them tonight, and then I'll email you and let you know what they
Cool.
think of me, because 'cause I'm interested to see even what language they do use.
Mhm. And that's it. And I somebody threw it back and said, "What do you think your kids would say about you?" And I'm like, nobody really asked me, and that was kind of cliche. You just throwing it back at me. But I'm like, you know what? It's a fair question. And I'm like, I'm the person who's here the majority of the time. My wife refers to me as like the no parent because I my no happens fast. But then I'll think about it, like, oh, can we have ice cream? No, I'm not giving you ice cream. Give me a minute. Okay, I'll let you have some ice cream. Or no, you have cookies or something. Or I'm quick to like, but then eventually maybe I'll come around and do something. But I've always wanted my kids to think that I am fair, that I do
Mm,
my best to understand the situation. I purposely I don't start arguments with them, but I'll purposely start debates with them
mhm,
just to get them talking. So
mhm,
maybe they'll think, oh, he talks too much. Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely true. Obviously, which is why I do podcasts. But it's I want to be the person that my daughters look up to. I want to be the guy that my son wants to be or wants to be friends with, that type of thing.
mhm.
But obviously, as a mom, you want your kids to just, I would say, love, respect, honor, all that good stuff, and know that she's the cool parent. She's the cool mom. We're going to the park. Dad's just gonna sit down and we're just gonna watch something. But mom's gonna take us to the park and do something.
Yep.
And
That's
that's
that's definitely the parent that I am, and they stand up for me. My husband and I, w we don't argue so much, but we kind of do an exaggerated, like, frustration at each other in, like, a playful way. So, for
mhm.
example, when he's done something that's a pet peeve, I'll start yelling like, "Ugh, why did you do this? I can't stand this. Ah, da, da, da." And then he'll start yelling back, "Well, you did this, and I would," and, like, we all are laughing about it, and my kids now jump in and they say, "Stop yelling at mommy. Be nice to girls."
Oh, that's wonderful. That is
Mhm.
wonderful.
So they always take my side. We have an argument about whether it's the queen's chair or the king's chair. They always call it the queen's chair. Um, so yeah.
My last question. I have this conversation with men, occasionally fathers, and it really it came from a conversation I had with a guest on Love is Black with my wife. And there was a gentleman, couple, and he said that growing up, he never saw his parents argue, ever. And because of that, he never argues in front of his kids now.
Mm,
And I'm like, that's interesting. And I said to him, how will your kids know how to argue when the time comes?
mhm,
And I said to him, and I'm no parenting master or expert, but I said, me and my wife disagree on things. We are somewhat on different ends of the political spectrum. We
mm,
disagree on a lot of things,
mhm,
but my kids see us disagree. They don't see us fight. And I take this more seriously because I have three daughters here,
mhm,
and that we disagree, but we disagree in a peaceful fashion. We disagree where my hands never go up. I'm not
mhm,
cursing her out. I'm not saying anything negative. And my response to him was, if nothing else, my kids know how to have a fight,
mhm,
know how to argue. They know how to deal with conflict and how to get a resolution. So I think it's a detriment to your kids to not have conflict in front of them, but to deal with it, but to clear it up. I want my daughters to see mom and dad argue, disagree, and then we leave and nothing happened. Nobody's crying. There's no noise in the background. Nobody's going to the hospital. Nothing bad is happening. They need to see that because they need to know that that's the kind of relationships, if they end up with men as their spouses, that the men that they end up with aren't going to hit them. They're just going to disagree.
Mhm.
So conflict resolution is so important. And even for my son's 19 and he's bigger than me, and he needs to know you can fight, you can disagree, you can have a blowout with your wife, but that's as far as it goes. And
Yeah.
when he sees that, he knows that nothing else goes down. And that's the way he needs to act also.
And I think that's why the communication piece matters because they need to know, my children need to know how to express what they're experiencing, what their opinions are. They need to have the language so that they can participate in some kind of healthy version of conflict resolution or conflict management. And so I also grew up in a house where I didn't see my parents argue ever, period, not one time. Um, and my husband and I do engage in disagreement in front of our kids. And it's, we do not cuss at each other. We do cuss, and we cuss in front of our kids. Not super proud of that. You might get a cuss word from a child, um, but we don't use that language towards each other in a hateful way or a harmful way. Um, and like was just saying, we also kind of make fun of ourselves and of our annoyance with each other in a very public way. That it's not any my at this point, my oldest kid is going around talking about daddy tripping. I'm like, yeah, he is. Show is. So like, they know like we're humans. Um and I think we have ways of communicating our displeasure or disagreements in ways that signify that we're in disagreement or unhappy or annoyed or whatever, but also that it's okay.
That's the most important thing, that it is okay. That disagreement is okay. It's just how you handle it that can or cannot be okay. And that's important.
Mhm.
I would like to let you know that if somebody asked me what kind of guest would Whitney Knoxley be on your podcast, she's wonderful. She
Oh.
gives great answers. She expresses herself. She's funny, cool as hell. I would go out and have a drink with her anytime. And maybe if I'm in Chocolate City, maybe I'll come through and we'll see what happens. But
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
so much. Thanks so for talking with me. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. I don't get to talk much about motherhood. So yeah, I actually have a lot of imposter syndrome around motherhood,
Mhm.
which may or may not have come out today. I don't know. I'm just not a It's weird. Motherhood for me isn't it is definitely a part of my identity, but it's not my only job.
Mm.
And in fact, we prioritize our relationship with each other and our relationship with ourselves before we prioritize our relationship with our children. So like motherhood and parenting, I have a perspective of a parent, but I'm not so serious about parenting, if you will.
That's interesting. It's not the top priority, but you're wondering how well you're doing it. That's interesting to kind of hear that. But I
Yeah,
have no
because I
doubt.
feel like moms are always like super mom. Like,
Mhm.
I just
Especially black moms, especially black
yeah.
moms. Mhm.
And I'm just not like they cool, those kids cool. Like I don't want to be in your classroom though. Like I don't love kids. Like, so I'm kind of just I'm a person that happens to have children and wants to keep them alive.
I like that. I like that. I like that. And you don't have time to talk about motherhood because you're too busy being a mother. We ain't have time to discuss what we're doing. I
Mhm.
just am mom. I ain't got time to
Mhm.
discuss it. You're not getting a dissertation on motherhood. Follow me around for a week. You'll see
Mhm.
what's up. So, how can people find you and tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you do? Let's hear it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, my podcast is Impostrix Podcast, where we validate professionals of color who navigate imposter syndrome narratives and racial toxicity within their career. So, I'm a firm believer that imposter syndrome is not a narrative that we have to internalize. And also, that when we feel like we don't belong, it's probably because we don't. And not because of our intellectual capacity or ability, but instead because we Black or we're other people of color, and the spaces that we're occupying in our professional fields were not meant for us. And in fact, they were meant to exclude us. And so on the podcast, we talk about how to navigate those dynamics, and all the complexity that comes with being a person of color, with professional power, if you will. Um, and you can find me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast, www.impostrixpodcast.com. I'm also an anti-racism consultant. Oh, that's so fancy.
You
She has
know.
a little ticker. Okay. Um, I am also an anti-racism consultant, a mediator, and an attorney, and I will be starting a project soon that will be preparing estate planning documents for middle class people in an affordable way. So, because right
Fantastic.
now that is not, it's not affordable to get a will. So
Mm,
I'm gonna make it affordable.
that's good. Thank you for that. Thank you for this conversation. I'm so glad we had to talk. And at some point, I had to start. I'm like, because we could have kept going. I mean, I
Hmm.
have another
Hmm.
hour until the kids get home, but it was it was a pleasure speaking with you. I hope we can do it again at some point.
Yes.
Um, Happy Mother's Day. I'm saying it super early, but I hope
Thank you.
this weekend, when this episode drops, right before Mother's Day, I hope your husband is destroying his credit so that you have a great weekend. You get to enjoy the food. If it's the peace, if it's just the serenity, if it is silence, whatever you need, I hope you get it because you deserve it. Thank you for being a Black mom. Thank you for being a Black woman. We so appreciate you if you don't hear it enough.
Thank you.
And I'm going to put it, hang on for a minute. Don't go. Another great episode. I love talking to Black people. If you've watched or listened to this podcast, you know there's a different, it feels different when I get to talk to my kin, talk to my people. We know our struggle. We know what's going on. This is an episode dropping the day before Mother's Day. So to all the moms who are listening, happy Mother's Day. Dads, make sure you take care of her. Make sure you express yourself. Let her know how you're feeling. It's good for her. It's good for you. Have a fantastic day. This is the one time I won't end this podcast the way I always do because this weekend's going to be about mom. Ladies, thank you for all that you do. Moms, thank you for all that you do. People who can have children, thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you. We respect what you do. You are honored. You are loved. You are the prize. And I'll see you next week.